Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm an author and publisher at Red Penguin Books. We're a publishing company for authors of all types and genres. So whether you have a book in your head or maybe 100 pieces of paper shoved into a drawer, please visit us at Red Penguin Books and unleash your inner author. I am so delighted to be joined by two authors who unleashed themselves today. Author Lucinda E. Clarke of the award-winning Walking on Eggshells is joining us all the way from Spain. And Heather Siegel, author of The King and the Quirky, another award-winning book, will be joining us from here in New York. Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show. Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I am delighted to be joined by two authors today who definitely are going to make you lovers of their books. So Lucinda E. Clarke is joining us across the pond in Spain, and Heather Siegel is here in New York. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so thrilled to have you. Lucinda Clarke is the author of Walking on Eggshells and Amy in Africa and a host of other books, and I am so thrilled that you're here. Lucinda, thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you very much for asking me, Stephanie. Really thrilled to be here.
This is great. I see the stack of books behind you. That's fabulous.
Well, I just thought I might,
I think that's a great idea. I love that. I was so fortunate to get your name from another author who was on the show. I believe the two of you met because you had similar experiences, that you were British citizens living in Africa, and that gave rise to Amy in Africa and some of the stories in there. But tell us a little bit about your background, because you have quite a long writing background.
I have a habit of falling into things, I started off in UK. Well, in fact, I started off in Ireland, then I went to UK. Then I married this amazing Walter Mitty guy who took us crofting in Scotland, except we hadn't really researched it. And in fact, there's permafrost about 6 inches down most of the year where we were. So we didn't actually, that wasn't a success. So then we went off to Kenya, and I was teaching there too. That collapsed after about a year. And then we went on to Libya, Colonel Gaddafi's country, as then. And I was teaching again. But while I was there, somebody said to me, well, they're looking for announcers on the radio. And I said, wow, that sounds fun. And what they were paying the most enormous amount of money. So I went along for an interview, just for a joke, really, and they took me on. So I worked on radio part-time there for about 5 years. And then that all went pear-shaped, as so often. If you live with the Walter Mitty, it goes pear-shaped sooner or later. So then we ended up in, where did we go next? Must have been Botswana. And I went back to teaching. And I thought, well, my writing days are over, because that's all I'd ever wanted to do. And, if I had said, when they asked me when I was still in school, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a writer. If I'd said I want to buy a box of red light bulbs and go and sit in a little booth in Amsterdam, they would have been less shocked.
That was one of my favorite lines, by the way, in Walking on Eggshells. I loved that line.
So anyway, in Botswana, I went back to teaching, and then I ran a riding school, the very worst one in the world. And then that went pear-shaped. Then we ended up in South Africa, and I was still teaching at a very, very upmarket girls' school, and they fired me. Now, I've never been fired in my life, even from a back job, nothing. I've always been a good chambermaid, or a good digging up dead Romans, or a very good at washing up in the kitchens, or, whatever, a factory worker. But I didn't know what to do. I was a bit panic-stricken. So I had got talking to the drama teacher there, and she said, if you've worked on radio, why don't you go to the SABC and try for an interview, have an audition. So they phoned me up and they gave me 24 hours notice, and I didn't have anything suitable to take to the audition. Well, no, I tell a lie. The first audition I went to was for continuity, and I didn't know. I said that a famous actress was the Minister of Education and a few things like that, and they gave me a whole page of Afrikaans to read, which I read phonetically, and everybody just fell about laughing. It was a disaster. So they sent me to the drama department, and I got about halfway through the audition, and he stopped me and he said, "Where did you get this material from?" And I said, "Oh, I wrote it, I'm very sorry." And he said, "I won't have you that often as an actress. You're not that much of a great shakes." He said, "But I will look at stuff you write." He said, "Go home and write." So I went home, and then the next day my friend brought in a competition form called Playwright of the Year Award. And she said, "Here's a booklet on how to write a radio play. Go home and write one." Well, I did, but then I realized it had to be typed. So my Walter Mitty husband found a typewriter overnight, had the letter N missing. But never mind, I wrote them all in by hand afterwards. But at least I had a typewritten manuscript. But it was so awful. So I chucked it in the dustbin. And unbeknown to me, he took it out, scraped the spaghetti off it, and took it into the SABC. And it won.
Oh, this sounds very much like a Stephen King kind of a spouse taking things out of the trash can.
So anyway, that was absolutely brilliant. I won. And after that, there was no stopping me. And I was writing just about every spare moment I had. And because I was actually beginning to earn money writing radio scripts and doing magazine articles and newspaper bits, then the amount of money I was earning from that was so far more than my teaching. I went full-time in 1986.
Wow.
So it all went on from there.
All because he fished it out of the trash can. I
Yes.
thank your husband for having faith in you when you didn't have faith in yourself.
I still don't. Do you know that, Stephanie? Every time I write a book, I think this is a load of rubbish, and it takes a lot of courage to say, all right, I'm going to press the publish button.
And all those gold seals on your books, that means nothing?
Well, yes, I suppose it does. I go and look at them if I get a bad review or if my rankings go down. I go and stare at them for a few minutes.
It's a good thing to stare at, yes. Looking at gold seals on books do help.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I did love, and I did read that section in Walking on Eggshells, that you were asked as a child what you wanted to be. And it was a writer, a novelist. And I love that you had that passion and you knew early on what you were going to be doing. You got there by quite the circuitous route though, didn't you?
I did actually, and the annoying thing was my grandfather actually owned and ran a newspaper in central China. And he was a stringer for, I think, the Telegraph and the Daily Express or something in Fleet Street at the time. So I thought he could just introduce me to a couple of friends, and I could go straight up and work on the big dailies on the front page, preferably. But he said no, he wouldn't even consider it, because he said to be a really good journalist, you need to be, A, invade people's privacy, and secondly, be able to drink anybody else under the table to get the truth. So it just didn't seem like me at the time. So I was a good girl. I went to be a teacher. I did enjoy it, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do.
It wasn't for you. It wasn't for you.
I mean, I'm supposed to be retired now, Stephanie. I'm supposed to be sitting on, by the pool with a margarita in one hand. And where am I? I'm in the back room on my laptop, and I'm happy at that.
Oh, well, I'm delighted that you gave up retirement even for a few minutes to come on with me. I know that your moving to Spain was the retirement move, wasn't it? Sunny
It was,
Spain?
yes. I got very bored very quickly and realized that if I wasn't writing, I got withdrawal symptoms. I mean, it's worse than giving up smoking. And, I just need to write every day. It's a bit strange, but never mind.
I think that's wonderful. And you can write with a margarita in one hand, can't you? Or I guess you
can't type very well with two.
Well, I don't know. You managed to write an award-winning manuscript without an N on your typewriter, so I think you can probably do it. Absolutely. Now, I knew about your books, Walking on Eggshells and Amy in Africa, but then I see you have some new things that have just come out. Would you mind telling us a little bit about those?
I did Walking on Eggshells to start with, and then I did 2 backup books about my career writing, because I was filming all over South Africa with crews, and I was writing my own scripts, and we were filming them and putting them together and editing them, mainly for award shows, but also for international conferences, tourist videos, you name it, I did it, promotional stuff, adverts, all that. So those are 3 books. I did just a freebie, which anybody can get for free on Amazon, called The Very Worst Riding School in the World, because believe me, it was. So that's the memoir side. Then I wrote a comedy where I went back to fairyland about 250 years after that famous ball. But Cinderella is now big, fat, blousy, the wrong side of the tracks, and she wants a divorce, but she wants the cash.
Oh, what is that one called?
Unhappily Ever After.
Oh.
And then, I don't know, I'm not sure, I haven't got a copy to hand here. And then I wrote 5 Amy books, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, okay.
So there's 5 in that series. And then, as I say, I've just started on psychological thrillers now.
Right, and you have 2 psychological thrillers so far, is that correct?
Yes, I'll have a 3rd by September.
Wow, and how does it feel to jump between, memoir, comedy, psychological thriller, that's a big jump.
It is. People say the comedy comes through just about everywhere, even if, I'm frightening my heroines to death. But I think the thing about, and obviously Heather may well have had a difficult childhood, because you mentioned that earlier before we came on air. I think the whole point about writing is that you can control the world. You are in control for the first time ever. So if I want to lop a leg off, which I have done with my heroine, it's sad really, but never mind, she's only got one leg, and you are in control of everything. I mean, you can just manipulate people. I mean, I put Amy through hell, and now I'm putting Leah through absolute hell as well. And it's fun. Fun. I don't know what that says about me, but still.
But I love that you say you control it. But let me ask you a question. Do you or do your characters come through your fingers sometimes before you get to rein them back in? Do they do things that surprise you?
Yes, they do. Now, I understand the difference between planning a book and just going for it. So I have always just gone for it, except for one book, which I sat down and I planned chapter by chapter. But it didn't work out because the characters took over. They did their own thing, and then I suddenly had the most enormous plot holes in the middle, which weren't going to work anymore. So I just sit down. I've got the start, the very first sentence, usually the first 2-3 sentences, and who the protagonist is or what the ending is going to be, and I just sit down and go for it. But when I was writing Amy over from 2014 to 2018, it was almost like laying a place for her at the table, because she was so alive. She was so real. I mean, she took over a lot of my interviews as well. People asked me to do a blog spot, then Amy insisted on writing it herself, and saying the most terrible things about me. But, she was a very real person.
Boy, she really did take control if she was saying terrible things about you.
Yes, she was. Well, she was fed up with what I was putting her through, you see.
I can't even imagine. I have often said to my authors that I'm delighted to work with, boy, I want to write fiction just for that experience of having a character come alive that just and do their own thing and back talk to me. I love that.
It happens, yes.
I can't even imagine. Okay, so there's one more book in the psychological thriller coming out in September.
Yes.
And
September, October. It's with the editor right now.
Okay, and do you have a totally new genre on the docket after that, or you're sticking with one of the ones you've done?
I might stick with psychological thrillers for the moment. There's going to be a 4th one. I've got an idea. What I've done is I've taken Leah here, right, and I terrorized her. And she comes, when I finish doing that, her best friend is in here. Then I wrote a book about her best friend with Leah.
Oh.
And now the next one is about her first late husband's aunt. And the story is mainly from her point of view. I moved them to the south of France, out of London. And the last one is going to be about the angst teenage daughter who is a pain in the butt. I'm going to do a book from her point of view. After that, I don't know.
That should keep you busy, considering you're supposed to be retired in Spain.
Well, to be quite honest, I think I just enjoy it more than possibly, I don't know, sitting having coffee or just, I'm not a beach bunny. So really, yes, that's my full-time hobby, I suppose. And it just happens to be that if other people have enjoyed the books, that's an added thing too. It's great.
Absolutely. And I do have to ask you, why Spain? You've lived all over the place. Why Spain for retirement?
Um, it was the nearest thing we could find to Africa, with relatively warm climate, although it's a lot colder here than I expected it to be. But also it's a lot cheaper to live here than it is in Britain.
Okay.
And we got the world. In fact, I woke my husband up in the middle of the night. He wasn't very impressed, and I said, "Do you realise that because Britain at the time is part of the EU, we can live in any of 27 countries with no problem at all. We don't have to go back to England." And so we got the atlas out the next day. That just shows you atlas, at the next day, and we looked at all the various countries, and Spain seemed to be the best bet. So we came and had a look, and we loved it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, now that Britain is not in the EU, does this change anything? Do you have to go back, or are you?
Oh, no. Luckily, we've got residential. We've got Spanish driving licenses. We're on the local council, not on the council per se, but on the council list. And apparently we're going to still have our free health, which is a big thing for us at our age. When you get old and wrinkly, you don't look for the nearest school, you look for the nearest clinic and the nearest doctor and the nearest hospital. And so, yes, apparently our pension will still keep coming, and our health service. So that's really all we need.
Lucinda, you are far from old and wrinkly, I have to tell you. Absolutely far from old and wrinkly. I'm already plotting the next time you're going to be on the show, because I'm fortunate enough to have repeat guests when they have new book releases and such. So you're not going anywhere. I'm just telling you that.
Thank you. I'd love to come back. Yes.
Well, I am delighted to have you, and I'm delighted to welcome Heather Siegel, who is a repeat. I was thrilled to have Heather on when she was releasing Out from the Underworld, and now The King and the Quirky was just released. And oh my goodness, Heather, I adore The King and the Quirky. And I think as soon as you sent me a copy, I emailed back after I read it, and my words to you were, if I could write, this is the book I would want to write, just because I love your whole aura in there. It's just I loved I can't write like that. I certainly cannot write like you, but yours is the book I would want to write. So thank you for writing it. And I'm sure that there are many people enjoying it right now.
Thank you. It was so fun to listen to you, Lucinda. I love all of your expressions. I don't think I've heard that before. Pear shape. That was very fun.
And I could listen to that accent all day. I don't know. It's just a lovely lilt. You've got two New Yorkers here, Lucinda. Your accent is just beautiful.
Well, New York is on my bucket list for sure. So if I ever do land, I shall be on the phone.
Well, yeah. You be on the phone. We're right here. We've got a guest room. We are ready for you.
You have masks?
And we have masks, yes. Yes, have masks, we'll travel,
Oh yes, I've got it around here somewhere.
Oh, I know. Well, that's the joy of Zoom, is I didn't have to tell you two before we came on the show that we would be wearing masks. I didn't have to say that. Hand sanitizer, all of those other things. Isn't this a world gone mad? It just seems.
It's a dystopian novel.
It is. It's like I feel like on March, I guess, 15th or so, I woke up in a dystopian novel, and I kept thinking, I don't know if you two had the same reaction. I know Lucinda, Spain was a little bit ahead of us, I think, in where things hit, but I thought it was going to be about 2 weeks. Okay, so we'll just kind of stay home for 2 weeks, and wow, no.
They were really strict here. We'd been away for 3 months, 2 months in Australia and 1 month in India. And we flew in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. And at midnight, the lockdown started. So if we hadn't had a house sitter who'd actually brought bread and milk in for us, we'd have been stuck. We weren't allowed out of the house. only one of the family, once a week, to go to the nearest supermarket. Finished in Clarke, nothing else. You
Wow.
could walk a dog 50 meters. And most dogs around in some places had an awful lot of dog walkers all of a sudden. You know, the dog would come back from one walk and somebody would be waiting to take it for the next walk. But that they were so strict, and if they saw you in the car, they'd stop you, and if you couldn't prove that you'd been to the supermarket, you got a fine. It was really strict.
That is very.
And that went on for, we're only just coming out of it now.
Yeah, well, I had heard Spain was hit, well, as was New York, very badly where we are. You flew in right before the lockdown.
8 hours before, yes.
Yeah, my daughter flew in to New York. She was in London, and she made it in about 8 hours before they were shutting everything here. We got her flown in.
Can you imagine being stuck in Mumbai for 3 months? No, it's a nightmare.
You know, I mean, London is a lovely place, obviously, but she was going to school there. So we flew her in, and she was one of the last planes in. So
you're lucky, yeah.
I understand that feeling. So yes, and here we still are in our little boxes. It's like the world hasn't changed much. But Heather, you managed a book launch through all of this. And
I had a backyard book launch.
I saw her very socially distant backyard book launch. I was actually just speaking about it with someone else because another author wanted to do, and I saw on her list of things that they would be wine and cheese. And because I saw yours, I said, maybe if you put the cheese on plates in advance so it's not a big buffet kind of grabby thing, it'll be better.
Well, I actually went to the supermarket because I thought, well, what am I? Well, it started with me just inviting 3 neighbors over, 3 local friends who are neighbors, and I got a text message from an acquaintance, and she said, "What time should I be there?" I thought, wait, let me go check my Facebook post and make sure I didn't just invite the world to my backyard. And so I went and I checked my Facebook post, and I thought I was pretty clear that I'm inviting 3 friends over who are going to wear masks and bring lawn chairs. But people started texting me, and because the book is centered around, I mean, the tagline is marriage, domesticity, I thought, well, the book is dedicated to my friends for being there for me during this time, the second family. And so I thought, it really isn't such a bad thing to have them in the backyard. So I invited them over, and I had them spaced 6 feet apart. Everyone, brought their masks. And I went to the supermarket, and I was trying to figure out what I would even serve. And I actually had like a meltdown in the supermarket. I had my mask on, I had my gloves on, and I'm going around thinking, well, I don't want to serve hold on, my husband's bringing me coffee. Thank you.
Oh.
I didn't want to bring, I didn't want to serve like little bags of potato chips or whatever. What could I serve? So I wanted to do something a little more elegant. And I think with the mask and trying to figure it out and worrying like, how am I going to do this launch? And will everyone bring masks? And I just had a little bit of a meltdown. So I walked out and I was driving home, and I'm like, I can't give up. I went to another supermarket, and there was a woman there who came up with this little idea to make individual cheese and cracker plates. So I did. And I thought it went pretty well. I had to find my daughter's karaoke mic 5 minutes before we went live on Facebook. Turns out it wasn't where we normally put it. It was in the vacuum closet because people in the back couldn't hear me because they really were spread out. But I thought it was fun. I thought it was casual, and because it was Facebook Live, people who were just on Facebook were able to access it.
I watched.
That was better in a way than if I had it at Barnes & Noble where I had it scheduled, because maybe I would have taken some pictures and posted them. Maybe, through, all my efforts of emailing and begging and coercing people to come down, I would have gotten 75, maybe 100 people to show up. But I had a lot of views and a lot of comments, and I have no idea if sales happened because of it, but we'll,
Well, I certainly got to attend your book launch, and I was delighted to be there. Thank you. And as I said, now I'm stealing your little plate cheese and cracker. You even had little saran wrap over them so that they could. I thought that was fabulous.
Loves creating it.
Yes, of course. And as I said, another launch of mine will have a similar thing soon because I saw it on yours. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And congratulations on the book. I hope that you've been getting wonderful feedback on it. It's quite the marriage story and friends and evolution of what it means to be a woman and a wife in many ways.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the book actually just picked up an award, which was fun. It won an independent book award, the Next Generation Independent Book Award. And I wrote it really because I was just trying to ask questions to figure out the answers to. And I realized I was living in a collective experience with many other people. And I just tried to blend some of that in and have fun with it. But, you know, I was listening to Lucinda travel all over the world. I haven't traveled all over the world. I've traveled a bit, but in the memoir, I do think there is a similarity to her trajectory, as you were saying, in that I tried many things.
Yes.
That's definitely, and then what I did was I took the material and wrote about it. So, you know, that's pretty much, I realized part of my MO is having those experiences, reflecting on them, and then writing about them. And this is just, you know, one of them. Although I am working in fiction, just because I am a little tired of the I pronoun. So we'll maybe take a little break from memoir, and you know, I have 2 manuscripts that I'm.
Oh, wonderful!
Which is on.
What kind of fiction is it?
So the first one is actually a YA story, and I'm shopping that now. I have an agent shopping it, although he literally sent it out a week before we went into lockdown. So we actually just talked about that, and maybe we'll try again in the fall. But that one actually was born out of a true story, which is me thinking I had an out-of-body experience. And it's just something I always wanted to write about. So this is a story of a girl who doesn't believe her mother is brain dead, as the neurosurgeons tell her, because she doesn't believe her mother's presence is in the room. And so she decides, and she has an experience that happened to her when she was a child, which is that she had this split second where she kind of separated from her body during a bike crash. And so she believes that her mother is in a place called the Indigo. And she has to, and by the end of chapter 1, her aunt, who she's living with, tells her, listen, it's been 7 years, we got to pull the plug. So the race is on to go up to this place and find her mother and bring her back to her body before it's too late. So that's the story of that one. And we'll see. And then the second one is, I can't talk about it because I'm still too in it, but it's little Orwellian.
Okay.
A little Atwoodian.
Yes.
Not that I'm pretending I'm as good as them, but I, you know, at least in that kind of vein is where I've headed. Yeah, I don't know that I can do realistic fiction. Next, but yeah, when I start thinking, well, if I can make this up, I mean, why am I going to stick with, you know, regular life here?
Exactly.
I need to go a little bit wider.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. You know, there's right what you know, but it certainly sounds like Lucinda's having a ball there, being, you know, taunted and whipped by her characters. You might as well have some fun with this, you know?
For sure. You know, memoir is so different because you have to live it, process it, and then figure out, well, what did any of that mean? And how can I tell it in a compelling way that others are going to care about it? And how can I connect it, you know, with universal themes for them? And, you know, fiction, I feel like you have, I don't know, maybe to me, it's like decorating a room. You have like a centerpiece. Like I had for each of these works that I'm working on, you know, the couch, so to speak, and then I'm ready to design the room around it. And so I had this scene that just came to me in my mind. And I thought, All right, well, that's probably like chapter 9. How do I get to there? And then where do I go from there? And that, I don't even know why, but that's how the process worked for me.
Wow. That's exciting to hear. Absolutely. Well, you were mentioning the King and the Quirky, that your life has had a plethora of different jobs, much like Lucinda. One of my favorite scenes is when you were in cosmetology school.
Yeah.
And you were quite good at it, which is terrible because you hated every minute of it. But
I believe the last chapter of that, the chapter before I enter cosmetology school, is, my husband, and it's just not, obviously not anything, I mean, you know me, but it was not anything that I should have been doing, because before that I was running coffee houses, cafes,
yes.
Writing. And so, right before then, I just remember, and I wrote it. My husband said to me, wait, what? You're going where tomorrow? You have a master's degree, right? And I was like, now is not the time to be uppity. And, I just went, and it was a terrible school.
I know.
And and then I was okay at it, which I don't know. One of the makeup people I came across at the time said that makeup is not an art form and makeup is not artistry. So this idea that we're calling people makeup artists, really shouldn't be. That they are technicians, makeup technicians, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I fully subscribe to that, but I think there is something to that. I mean, you keep doing the same thing over and over.
Right. Well, I think makeup artists are also, therapists, especially if it's that wedding morning. And oh yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure even in your short stint with it, doing weddings at 4 o'clock in the morning or whenever you had to show up, you have enough for a book right there.
Well, the whole point of the makeup school was to help a business
yes.
that wasn't doing well, that I had gotten myself into, that I'd started. So that was like even more comical about it. And the stakes were upped because the business was in danger of failing, and then also the marriage, right? And the whole sense of the hell am I and what am I doing? So that's how I upped the stakes there. But honestly, that was very true to life. I mean,
yes. Well, you and Lucinda both have some similarities in that I recall your husband, Heather, saying to you, "Why aren't you writing? How's that writing going? Don't you have a thing for writing?" And Lucinda, your husband, fished a manuscript out of the garbage. I'm so happy to hear about the support. That's great. and his line, Heather, don't you have a master's degree? As he kept trying to rein you back in, and I'm glad you're back here in the world of the writer.
Thank you. But you know what? I wasn't ready to be, I studied writing, when I was in my 20s and in my 30s, and I wasn't really ready, I think, to have anything to say of worth until now. Like I almost feel like I'm just beginning now. I just celebrated my 50th birthday in lockdown. And I just think, I don't know, that is the good part. Like, unlike makeup artistry, where you have to keep looking good, to keep up with the world. You could look like crap as a writer, and you could just, age well. Your mind, grows stronger and gets better and ages better. And you become a better writer over time. And so for that reason, I feel happy about choosing that path now as well, because it helps me not care about the mirror.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And you have a fan in Lucinda who was nodding her head during that whole, you could look crap as a writer bit. So
Don't you just hate those 20-year-olds that say, I've just written a memoir? And you think, what?
Yeah, well, I think Heather really speaks truth when she says, you know, I had nothing to say. Now, I could beg to differ because I have this book of yours that everything took place before you were 20. But you're right, you have to process. And people who write memoir too soon are just really venting. You know, they really haven't had time to bring it to where it is today. So
there are writers who have, you know, and there are writers right now who have a lot to say at that age. What I'm saying is you get better at saying it as you get older, I think. I mean, didn't Carson McCullers write her first novel when she was 19? And it still stands as like an American classic. I don't know. I mean, I think that there are phenoms, of course. I'm not one of them. Took me some time to figure out what I was doing.
Well, I think writing, besides having something to say, sometimes when we're younger, we also need, we're looking for those structured kind of jobs, like teacher or makeup artist, or, you know, you're a business owner. A writer, you have so much self-responsibility as far as actually doing something. You know, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who say, I'm a writer. That just means they sleep late and drink a lot of coffee. You know, they're not actually doing anything. So I think if you're too young, you don't have that self-responsibility either to follow through.
Yeah. I think writing's a lifestyle too. That's something that I realized. You know, the same way that working, you know, exercising is a lifestyle. You know, you every day you contribute toward this lifestyle. And you know, Lucinda, you were calling it a hobby. For me, it's just something that I do. It's just part of the routine, is checking in. And I may not write much in a day. It may be a paragraph. It may only be, you know, some notes to myself, or maybe 15 pages. But, you know, kind of checking in with that world every single day, and contributing toward your art. I think that it's a lifestyle.
Right.
And I think that the structured jobs, you know, it's hard to have both.
Right. No, I would certainly agree with that. Do you have a set, like, every morning I have my coffee, I go to my office, I write? Do you take writer's retreats? Is there something kind of said about things?
Well, I think that I have, I need to do a few things at once. I don't know why it is, but I do things in like pairs and in threes. I never just like work on one thing. I'm usually working, like if I'm working on fiction, I'll work on other things. That might be an attention span problem. Or it just might be that the more that I do, the more productive I am. So what I do is, now my routine is completely thrown off. You know, at 2:00 in the morning when everyone's in bed, I'll, like, if I can't sleep, I'll turn on my computer. But before, it would be whatever I'm contributing toward, like whatever structured job I have, right? Like if I was doing a little teaching or whatever my classes are, I would build my writing in around that.
Gotcha.
So, you know, if something started at 10 a.m. to 3, then, you know, maybe come home for a little while and then, but every day. So I wouldn't say no, it's not 9 to 5 every day because I have to do other things.
Right.
But I would say every day there's a couple of hours put toward it whenever I can squeeze it in.
Right, right. And do you have a place?
I actually have a desk that is just, you know, has a lot of stuff on it that, you know, things I don't want go on my desk, you know, the bills, don't want to, you know, any kind of paperwork, you know, like, ugh, icky paperwork, that kind of stuff. That goes on the desk. But my laptop is my desk, and I just take it around the house in different places depending upon where others are not.
Right, right. And to get away from those bills. I mean, who wants to write a novel when you're faced with bills? That's just awful.
You can't write a novel when you're faced with bills.
No, absolutely.
You're in survival mode.
Exactly. Lucinda, how about you? Do you write every day? Do you have a set place? I'm just asking for our writers out there, or future writers. They always want to do what successful people do.
Well, like many African countries, you know, exchange rate is pretty awful anyway. So when we moved to Europe, we knew it was going to be a lot more expensive to live. So we've only got, I call it the rabbit hutch, but it's just a small place, 2 bedrooms, bathroom, lounge, kitchen, dining room. So during the day, I sit at the table over there and I write, and in the evening, I take my laptop across in front of the television that might do my retweets, or I might go onto Facebook or something like that. So I just sort of move from there to there during the day. And yes, during lockdown, and I shouldn't say this really, but I loved lockdown because it was quiet, it was peaceful. Nobody was going to call around. I could just put a sweatshirt on and, go for it.
A lot of people who loved lockdown. Don't feel bad.
So I was writing 3,000 words a day, and I found that was quite comfortable. But I'm not any good at anything else. I can't grow flowers. I'm a very ordinary cook. I hate housework. So really, if it's the only thing I really love doing, I do tend to do it rather a lot, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And yes, there's a lot of people who enjoyed living in their pajamas for months on end during my own son. I tease him and say, what are you going to do when we go back to real life? You just sit here and play video games in your pajamas. So yes, lockdown will end and then we go back. But I'm sure you're good at other things. I mean, do you like to read?
Oh yes, no, I do read a lot. I read and I review. I do a lot of that. So I suppose between writing the things and reading the things, I would say that's probably most of my day. It's awful to say it, isn't it? I mean, we do go out for meals and we do socialize and things.
Right.
As well. And when it's not locked down, I do a bit of charity work too. So that takes a bit of time.
Sure.
But yeah, I get fidgety if I'm not doing something.
And you were the world's worst writing school at one point, right?
The riding school? Oh dear, yes. It started off with 2 horses, and then I got lumbered with 3 more, and they were really fit for the knacker's yard. In fact, they would pass the knacker's yard if you think about it. I mean, they've had trouble getting them there. And yes, it was. I actually taught with a copy of the Pony Club handbook stuck down the front of my jodhpurs, which I would refer to every few minutes so that I could tell the kids what to do.
Did you
and
say
I was just
riding school or writing school?
Riding horses.
Oh, I thought it was a writing.
I did
teaches writing with a T.
Yeah, well, I did lecture in script writing at Durban Technical College, peripatetic for a few years, and they were sort of adults. Well, teenagers, adults. It sort of went across the board. So, but that was specifically script writing. But script writing was very different to writing books. I've done a couple of books in the early 90s for the Big Five, Heinemann Macmillan. They'd commissioned me to write books because they'd heard the radio programs. But when they offered me more contracts, I said, no, I can't, because you're only going to pay maybe in 6 months and it's royalties, and I can't wait. I've got to keep writing scripts. So I had to turn it down, which is why I self-published when I decided to take up writing again and thinking, can I write a full-length novel? And I had a lot to learn. I mean, I wasn't descriptive enough. I was so used to writing pan camera around panoramic scene, zoom into cottage and woods, Now I had to suddenly describe the cottage and the woods and how you get there. So it was a big learning experience for me. And commas, I put them all in the wrong place because I put them for voiceovers. You put commas in certain places for voiceovers, but that is totally, the grammar Nazis had a field day until I got them fixed, So yeah, I had to more or less start from 2013, almost start from scratch.
Wow, that's a lot to do. But you were always writing. You've always had that love since you were a young girl.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Any advice from either of you for our writers out there? I know so many watch, and as I said, want to hang on to. Okay, She's successful. She won an award. How did she do it? How do people get started?
I would say find what you're obsessed about.
Obsessed about.
Find what keeps knocking around in your head, and see what do you have to say? What do you have to say about that? Or what are your questions that you want to explore? Especially for nonfiction. What are those burning questions that you keep coming back to? And maybe for fiction, is there an experience that was wild for you that could be even wilder, fictionalized? Or I guess you could start with a question too for fiction.
Well, that's a great starting point. I love that, starting with a question, because then it's an exploration. Lucinda, what should our young writers do out there? Well, they could be old writers, but new writers.
Okay, two words basically: read and write. Get it down on paper, then look at it, but just get it down. Whether it's a story you want to tell, or whether it's something, an event that happened that you want to recount. It's very easy to procrastinate and look at that blank page and think, I don't know. But just sit down and write. And the more you write, the more you read, hopefully. And if you read, that actually improves your writing, because you have mental phrases from, I'm not saying necessarily the classics. I think of the best-selling authors, because they sell a lot of books, because they write good stories. Not sort of things you have to plow through at school. And I did a lot more classic reading when I did several series for television on interviewing Julius Caesar and Eliza Doolittle and various other things for set books. And I read a lot of Shakespeare and that. And it made a lot more sense when I was older. But if you're just starting, then read popular stuff and just sit down and write and see what happens.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Heather, remind all of our viewers where your website is, where your books are, so that they can find you.
So I keep it all under one roof. It's heathersiegel.net, and it's spelled SIEGEL, so heathersiegel.net.
Terrific.
You're there.
And links to all of your books are there?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And also, I run writing workshops virtually, fiction and nonfiction. And I also specialize in memoir. So if anybody needs any help, or a book coach, or a place to incubate their books.
Oh, I love that word, incubate a book. Absolutely. I'll make sure to put that link on with the show notes. And Lucinda, where can our viewers find you?
Actually, has this come out in reverse or not?
Oh, no, it's perfect. Lucinda.
Right. LucindaEClarkeauthor.com. I just happen to have it next to me here anyway.
I love that.
I fling them out in all directions along with bookmarks whenever I see somebody who speaks English. No good for because selling in Spain is quite tricky, because most people speak Spanish, of course, and although I've had a couple translated into Spanish, there are a limited number of English. I can't go to bookshops and libraries and that kind of thing, because it just doesn't work, so I have to do everything online. Gotcha. But as I say, I have been known to stand at Alicante Airport watching all the tourists come in, and as I hear them speak English, I hand them a pen, just in the hope they might need something.
Oh. That's fantastic. Well, I hope we gave you a nice little bit of English sounding if you're living in a place that most people are speaking Spanish. Do you speak Spanish yourself?
Embarrassingly, not a lot.
That must be.
Tried to pick up. I was going to do all that during lockdown. I was going to learn to play the piano, play the guitar, speak fluent Spanish, totally sort out the house. And what did I do? I wrote a book. So,
well, that's a much better thing to do with your lockdown time.
I think so.
Well, I can't thank you both enough for joining us, and please keep us in mind when you have your next book launches, and I would love to have you back.
Fabulous. That would be great.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and happy writing to our viewers.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's been great.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well. please visit betweenthecoverstv.com. By the way, at betweenthecoverstv.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.